Hey everyone, this is Mike with the 38 Company. We are, as you know, the Beach Happy Company. We're all about the beach, but we're also about happiness, finding happiness in your life. And one of the things we want to start doing is interviewing interesting people who have a unique or fresh perspective on happiness and how to cultivate it in your life, or how to design the life that you want to live. And we want to take a moment to welcome Daniel Walker.
Hello.
Hello. Obviously, you and I have known each other a while, but I'm finding some things out about you, including the fact that you have a pretty adventurous side. So before we jump into all of that and tell people what you recently accomplished, how long have you been here at the beach?
Just about 10 years.
And where did you move from?
I had a 2-year stint in Tallahassee, Florida, but I was a Georgia boy up until that point.
All right. And I know you do real estate.
Yep. I work for England Volkers Global Real Estate. I'm a real estate broker, primarily selling luxury vacation rentals along the coast.
And have you always been in the real estate business, or was that new when you moved to the beach?
It was new when I moved to the beach. Yep. I had I was in the financial services business before that. So I worked for Wachovia Bank, if you remember those guys.
Of course, yeah.
So that was my primary employer. And then I had a couple random small businesses before I came here.
Before we get into the big adventure that you recently embarked on, what brought you to the beach? How did you end up here?
I was going through a divorce, and we were here. Me and my family were here for my mom and dad anyway, and brother and his girlfriend, my girlfriend at the time. We were here for Labor Day weekend, and basically just decided, like, you know what, screw it, I'm moving to the beach. So
it's amazing, really, and the whole focus of the Beach Happy show is really at the end of the day is about happiness, and that's what we did. I mean, Angel and I had 4 kids, and we were kind of at a transitional point. I'd had some businesses that had not done so well, and so we were just ready to pull the eject cord. And I think the way you just started your story is the way that, I don't know what percent, but I'd say probably 80% of the stories of the people who live here. Yeah. It's like, one day I just said, screw it, I'm going to head to the beach.
Let's go to the beach. Our happy place.
Yeah. And so how long did it take between the time you said screw it and the time you were here? How long did that take?
Labor Day is early September. And then I was here in October.
Okay.
So I just started studying.
What year was that?
That was the end of 2011.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very similar story to ours. We got here in September and never looked back.
Yeah.
So one of the for the listeners and viewers, you recently did something that seems to be a little not out of character, but certainly a new endeavor for you. You climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
I sure did. Yep.
And are you a climber?
Not really. The last couple of years, I got some buddies that live out in Denver. And so 2 years ago, we went and climbed Telluride, and then last year we climbed Boulder. So I was just starting to get into it. But this trip was pure happenstance, like the right thing at the right time. It was just spur of the moment and definitely a impulse buy. So.
But this was on the heels of, and I've talked to a lot of people about 2019. 2019 was a rough year for a lot of people. It sounds like you had a particularly rough year.
It was definitely the most difficult year I've ever had in my life. 17 and 18 were a little tough too, but 19 was just like, it was almost destructive. So it was a hard, very, very difficult year.
And I don't want to pry, but that said, I know you had like a rapid series. They always say sometimes the bad things happens in threes. I think you had at least 3 or 4 because you were changing jobs and going through relationships, and then also you had significant deaths.
Yeah, a lot of loss. Yeah. I mean, it was probably, I think it was 6 or 7. I have to go through them, but it was just starting at the tail end of 2000. Let's not even talk about Hurricane Michael and the stress that caused. That's everybody encountered that.
Livelihood,
right? Yeah, it was. But yeah, a lot of loss and a lot of stress, and I guess the anxiety, which that comes from stress, and the depression that can come from the anxiety. So it was building all throughout the year.
So you were in a relationship with someone, and then you found out your father he had been diagnosed with cancer numerous times and had been fighting it for how long?
This was his 10th bout of cancer since 2003. So it was one of those situations where, he'd get diagnosed, he'd go to treatment. The year after, he was clean. Year 2, it was back every single time.
What kind of cancer?
This started out in 2003 with thyroid. And then this was a combination of thyroid and something he had in his lung. I don't remember exactly what it's called. I'm sorry. But this one was terminal, this go round. So early in the year, because it was on his carotid artery.
Okay.
And Mayo Clinic was, all their specialists were all afraid to work on it. They thought that the risk was much greater than the reward.
Okay.
So,
how old was he when he passed away?
69.
69, too young.
Yep, sure was.
So you had business changes. You had your father, who, from what I understand, was really your best friend.
For sure.
But then you had another friend also pass away.
Yeah, and that was later in 2019. My father passed away August 5th, and that's kind of leading into the story of how I booked the trip. But yeah, I had one of my best friends actually died from he was one of those people that died from a vapor cigarette. And
what?
Yes.
How does that happen?
I guess, I'm not real sure. All I know is that it caused him to have a lung failure, and he was only 40 years old. So, but apparently he told his parents he wasn't feeling good, and he passed out. And next thing you know, he's on ventilators and everything, and he lasted about 4 or 5 days in the hospital.
And this was someone you grew up with?
I grew up with this guy. Went to elementary school with him. Went to Sunday school with him. He was my first roommate in college. So he went to college, Georgia Southern, with me. He just died way too young. But and then my I had another friend, my closest friend in my entire life, also my other roommate that moved to Georgia Southern with me. I lost him in a different way. He kind of had a breakdown and had to be sent off. And with everything that was going on in my life at the time, which is a lot to tell, he needed me, and I really couldn't be there for him as well because of the protection of the girl I was dating, kids. He was he battled bipolar schizophrenia, so it was hereditary with him, and it just happened to happen in the midst of the most stressful year I've had. Yeah.
So your father passes away, and based on what you and I spoke about earlier, you were actually probably more prepared for it than you thought, because this has been something you've been probably contemplating for a decade.
Yeah. Well, when he came back from Mayo, he went in home hospice, and they gave him 3 to 6 months to live. And me and my brother rotated weeks. Almost every week we would rotate a week to go spend time with Dad and give my mom a breather, let her step out of the house, because she was basically his caregiver. So that was a challenge. We were doing that. I guess it was from late February until he passed in August 5th. Along that, during that time is when my best friend had his breakdown. He's better now, thank God. I also had a loss. My girlfriend at the time was, not just my business partner, but we actually found out we were pregnant. So we got really, really excited about that. But I was gone a lot. And then when I was home, I think it was just a stressful environment because we were working together, and I'm down and out. Who knows? I'm very impressed that she was able to last that long with me. But we ended up losing the baby, and then she decided she wanted to pursue the relationship, and my partnership split up, so it's kind of starting over. So it was a lot of things going on, a lot of negative things going on at the same time, a lot of stressors, But to answer your question about my dad, he was in home hospice for so long, until August 5th, that my expectations of when he passed away were not met. Like, I thought, okay, this is my best friend. I'm going to be, locked in a bedroom for days. I'm like, this is going to be tragic. And of course I sobbed and stuff, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I was like, okay, he's in a better place. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe we were dealing with this so long that unlike someone who's surprised by a loved one that they lost, maybe it's just not that bad. Maybe I was more prepared. But in a nutshell, it was there. I just didn't know it was there at the time.
So not to, recap everything, but I mean, you had a partnership, a relationship that dissolved. You lost a child that was on the way. You lost your father. You lost a friend. You had other friends in the middle of stress. And then something happened. So obviously a horrific year by any standards. And then you see an ad. Where do you see this ad, and what is the ad for?
Well, and the year progressively got bad, but August 5th, my father passed, right? I was at home, I was at my mother's house in her spare bedroom. I remember I was laying on the bed, checking some emails and looking at Facebook, and I saw a Facebook advertisement out of nowhere for Mountains and Marathons is what it was called. And it was a 6-month leadership training / emotional health training program that eclipsed and ended with a climb of the 3rd highest climbable mountain in the world. I mentioned that I'd been to Telluride in Boulder, right? So I knew I loved it. I knew that was an experience. I also had been to several excursions that involved leadership training before. So I knew that it would be good for me. And being 2 days after my dad died, I was sitting there like, okay, this is bound to get worse. It's probably good to have someone to vent to and who knows how much worse, but someone, someone to talk to, and maybe even a group of strangers to talk to. And
so you booked this online?
Yeah, that's what I meant by impulse buy. I saw the advertisement. I probably thought about it for like 3 hours. I hit the enter button to inquire. I had an interview the next day. They were starting, this is like on a Friday or something, towards the end of the week. They were starting the upcoming Monday. And I'm like, guys, I still got to bury my dad. I'm not ready. So they allowed me to start a week late.
So extremely spontaneous.
Yes.
And at the time, your friend hadn't even gone through yet, his issue. So you're kind of in the middle of this.
Well, my friend had, but okay. my friend that passed away from the e-cigarette had not.
Okay.
He passed away, I believe, in October. So, yeah.
You booked this trip, and you booked it basically 5-6 months in advance of actually going.
We were set to the climb was going to start January 17th.
And how many people are in this virtual group?
Including the 2 organizers, leaders of the group, the business owners that kind of started the Mountains and Marathons group. There was 8 of us total. So 6 newbies and 2 with experience.
So Mountains and Marathons, is it literally marathons, or is that a symbolic of the challenges, the long distance?
The business has not been, it's been around, I think, 2 years now, 2, maybe 3. And mountains are included, and marathons are included.
Okay. Different aspects of the same.
Right. Just different around the world.
So tell me a little bit about the months where you've committed, you've signed up, and what's happening online with these guys? Like, what are your sessions, for lack of a better word, like?
I would have a individual coaching session once a week. Okay, that was usually later in the afternoon, and then we would have a team, or a group team, whatever you want to call it, session with the 6 newbies that were there on the call. That was at 5:30 every Thursday morning because we had different time zones. 3 of us were from the U.S. Yeah, so 3 from the U.S., a couple from Australia, and 1 from Dubai.
And as you interacted with these other soon-to-be partners in this trek, had they experienced similar losses or things in their life, or was this just something that they were passionate about doing?
Almost there were definitely some that had a very rough 19, like I had. But there was a couple that just needed to find their place and find their purpose, and they were just like, I want this adventure, I want this challenge, and I'm hoping to come back a changed person. So,
all right. So that's not a lot of time. Obviously, you've already made a couple of ascents, in Telluride, et cetera, that vaguely, what to expect. That said, the months are getting closer. Are you doing any sort of training or preparation? And if so, what is that?
The program also came with the fee that was paid also included a a virtual personal trainer that I also had a call with, I'm in a virtual meeting with once a week, and a nutritionist for once a week. And that included, I cheated. I won't lie. I cheated quite, especially during the holidays. But I became a whole foods plant-based diet. That's what I started exercising, and so I pretty much eliminated meat.
Starting when, say?
Week 3 in the program.
Okay, so October.
Almost 6 full months. Yeah. Well, no.
September.
Early September. Actually, maybe late August. But
and so you went without meat for the most part between September and all the way through, or obviously the holidays or
Thanksgiving. I ate the ham, and I ate the turkey, and I ate the rest of the week for sure. You know, I love my sushi and I love my bone-in ribeyes. So sure. I would cheat. Maybe I'd probably eat meat no more than 3 or 4 times a month.
And how did your body react to that? Like, how did you do? Because you're seeing an increasing number of people, including professional athletes and health professionals, move to a vegetarian diet. I mean, like, how did you fare?
It was much easier than I thought. I actually started doing a food delivery. I was using HelloFresh. They've got a vegetarian option, and the food's great.
And so it's delivered, and you got everything you need to prepare. Right. Yeah.
And then I got very fond of juicing. So I was doing a smoothie in the morning and juicing in the afternoon for lunch, and then I was usually eating HelloFresh in the evening. So it really wasn't nearly as difficult as I thought, you know. And I felt good after eating too. It's a different kind of, if you haven't experienced it, it's a different kind of full. It's not heavy bloated. I ate too much and need to take a nap. You know what I'm saying? You're not lethargic.
That's what I hate, because I love food. I don't want to feel hungry, but I find that when I am left, I was kind of raised to eat everything on your plate.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a wonderful, noble thing, but I also think it's a curse, you know, because I will literally not just eat everything on my plate. Even if I'm not hungry, I will eat everything. And then if there's something left on Angela's plate or one of the kids' plates, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that.
Sure.
You know? And so I don't eat, you know, until I'm full. I eat until there's just nothing left. Yeah. You know? So you're going through this change in diet, change in, you know, presumably exercise routine. What about your state of mind? I mean, you obviously had this one more friend who passed away. Is it getting better or worse or the same?
I was staying so busy, just trying to keep my real estate business afloat, and I heading out of town short periods for short trips and stuff like that. I was just staying so busy that it felt like I was okay. But I found out later that it really wasn't.
When did you start to realize that?
It was around October. It was after, you know, it was around the time that Joey passed, my buddy Joey. And I just noticed that I started getting a little depressed. I guess enough time, 2 or 3 months ago, since his dad died, I was starting to get a little depressed, starting to get a little unsettled. I noticed that in retrospect, I see now, I started drinking too much. I wasn't necessarily drinking too frequently. I mean, I had a mountain to climb, and I had a nutritionist that I had to report to and report if I was drinking or not. And the leaders of the Mountains and Marathons group were also encouraging me to cut that back and cut back a lot of bad habits that I might have had. But when I did drink, maybe 2 or 3, maybe once a week, I was drinking heavy. You know, I was drinking too much.
Sure.
So, and you know, I had a couple, you know, episodes that I regret and became ashamed of, and so that kind of built, Michael. What happened was I made a couple mistakes, and I got down about those mistakes, started beating myself up. I guess it all started snowballing, and then literally like the holidays came, and the loss was like just so apparent and so in front of me. It was all I could think about.
Yeah. And your mother's still alive?
My mom's still alive, yeah.
Okay. And they were married for a long time?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were like, this is not a second.
They were high school sweethearts.
Okay, high school sweethearts,
yes.
as we see sometimes in that generation. So holidays have settled in, you've lost another friend, and you have this looming pinnacle, figuratively and literally, that is coming up pretty fast in your life. So you've gotten through Christmas now. You've gotten to New Year. When do you leave for the big trip?
January 15th.
Okay. So you're now 2 weeks out. All right. You've got the holidays behind you. Are you nervous? What are you thinking at this point?
I was so busy and I wasn't real. I was so busy and focused on staying busy in my mind, that I didn't really do a lot of research for the trip. So I didn't want to psych myself out. Yeah. And, I didn't do any research till the week before, matter of fact, but my mind state was about as low as I've ever been in my life. And it's, I'm a little, it's not easy talking about this because it's showing an extreme amount of vulnerability, but it just got to the lowest point I've ever been in my life.
So that was after the holidays. That was before you've left on the trip.
Through the holidays, getting progressively worse every day. And I mean, I literally was like, okay, I'm about to have the trip of a lifetime in less than 3 weeks. I was like, just you can get by. And so I got back on the train with the nutrition and the training because of the holidays. I was eating way too much and everything that comes with the holidays. And but that might have had something to do with me getting down too, as I stopped my routine, my regimen. Sure. Yeah. But anyway, I got really down and out, and really the only thing on my mind was taking this trip.
Okay. So you're kind of at the darkest stage of all of this. Ironically, 6 months after, some of the big events had transpired, and you've got a plane ticket. And as a group, are you guys all meeting there? And where are you flying into?
We're all staying in Tanzania, Africa. Yeah. And I got there a day early. It was a 24-hour, just under 24-hour flight. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never taken a flight that long before in my life. So I got there a day before anybody. So I had some time to myself. I actually explored the town of Moshi.
So tell me, what's that like? You've never been to Africa before, I assume. And you are now in this extremely exotic location. What is that alone time before the rest of the group arrives? What is that like as you're kind of walking around or driving around this town?
At first, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I'm a little bit nervous, and I go explore the town. One of the guys that was going to take us hiking, I said, "Hey, man, I got a day to kill. Can I see the town?" So he showed me the family that raised him and the good, the bad, and the ugly of the town. It's a very it's a very third world town. Moshi is, and so I explored that. So it was eye opening, and it was kind of it was a breathtaking moment even before we climbed the mountain. Just seeing the way these people lived, and me finally realizing the step that I had taken to improve myself. It was just kind of like, wow, I'm literally walking around the streets of Africa. It was a tad bit overwhelming.
I've kind of found that when we go to places, it doesn't have to be, it's nothing about third world or poverty or anything like that, but you do begin to realize and appreciate that suffering is something that everybody experiences. I mean, no one escapes the death of family members and friends. No one escapes health issues. And when you go and you see how other people live, it is an often a refreshing reminder of priorities and, gratitude. Yeah. So I think that I always encourage people to travel, because I'm never happier personally, I think, than when I'm in a slightly alien situation where I'm having to really think, okay, I've got to pay attention to cross the street. I've got to pay attention to this signage that I can't decipher. It's being present. And I think that we've kind of learned that being present psychologically helps people you know, because when you're not present, you're thinking too much. You know, you're worrying, you're contemplating, oh, what did I do wrong? Or, oh, I wish I had said this, or, you know, but when you're present, you're focused on whatever it is. And I find that when I'm in an exotic place like that I can't help but be present.
Exactly right. Yeah.
You know, so tell me, you're exploring this town, and I say town, is it a city? Is it a town?
It's a city. Yeah, it's a city, but it's pretty much the only city in Africa I saw, so I can't really compare it to much, but yeah.
Describe to me walking, like that night, are you kind of by yourself? Like going out and finding a restaurant? Are you walking around looking for a place to have a beer? What are you doing?
Well, it was a day trip. We started off going to a couple souvenir / art stores, you know what I mean? And then he took me to see the lady who raised him. He calls mama, obviously raised him as a little kid. And she had a homemade oven made out of clay outside, and they were eating fish that were about 4 inches long that they had caught in the river. And it made me just realize, like, you know, little fish like that we don't even consider eating. These people are surviving on this. They're surviving on this. And so it was awesome. It was moving. Like you said, it was eye-opening, and it made you grateful for what you do have. He took me downtown to the city where the market was. And these are people selling their crops. This is people selling goods, homemade clothing and jewelry and everything. And it makes your head spin. I was walking through there, and I'm the only Caucasian person there.
Sure.
And I'm getting hit from all angles with street vendors and stuff. But it was so awesome. You know, if you smile, they smile back.
Of course.
I learned Mambo and Jumbo. Mambo is kind of like a little more proper. Jumbo is more like a what's up. And so that's the only word I needed to know at the time.
I've learned that if you take the effort and you try to learn a few phrases, and it can be nothing more than hello, thank you, please, you know, it endears people to you.
Yeah.
They know you're trying. So the next day, you finally meet these people that you've been in virtual communication with for 6 months. So tell me about the people who you all of a sudden find yourself sitting with.
It was a very diverse group. A guy from Dallas, a girl from Wisconsin, lady from South Florida, and then I think I mentioned Dubai, and other 3 were from Australia. All there from different times. I mean, it was an instant connection because of the 6 months we had been through. They'd been through the same training and the same nutrition that I'd been through for the most part. If they were overweight or they had some sort of physical ailment, they tweaked it. But we had all been through the same assignments for our leadership training and our emotional health training and stuff like that, which consisted of a lot of things. I mean, it was, relationship clearing was one, and there's still some of that I got to do, but it's like, just clearing, basically just like it sounds, clearing the air with maybe some rocky relationships or something was just one of them.
Is there somebody, in the group that you kind of resonated with and thought, or was it just kind of everybody's all on the same team, or did you find yourself kind of finding somebody that, was on the same wavelength?
Not at first. At first we were complete strangers. I mean, we were getting to know each other on a personal level. It wasn't so much part of the program. Like the first day we had 3 different meetings, round tables. We were sitting outside with a great view of Kilimanjaro and its snow-capped top in the distance. It was great. And we were like, all right, we're climbing that thing tomorrow. So, and we were just getting to know each other. And I did make really good friends with Osama, the guy from Dubai. He was my tent mate. So we got to know each other. He's like a 27-year-old guy that runs marathons around the world for a living. Well, not for a living, but like
as a passion,
at least a week a month. Yeah. Passion. But at those round tables is when I realized for the first time how much built up pain I had inside of me.
Is this something that other people are expressing as well? I mean, so this is in some ways a little bit of a therapy session kind of going on for you guys as well?
It started out with us wanting to discuss with the group publicly why we came, what challenges we have encountered in the recent past. And after that, I mean, that's everybody kind of teared up.
Yeah.
I actually did a lot more than teared up though. So it was very weird.
So you had an emotional release, all this pent up.
I started talking about that. I mean, I brought up everything, but then when I started talking about Dad in particular, I just started like, just heavy weeping, and to the point where it was hard to talk. But I love what they did. I tried to pass the conversation to the next person sitting beside me to my right, and they were like, "No, keep going." And so for about a good 10 minutes, I'm sitting there explaining myself, bawling, crying.
You know, that's one of the things that I mean, I grew up. You said you grew up in rural Georgia. I grew up in rural Alabama. You know, I mean, we are definitely kind of taught. Not, intentionally, but I mean, to oppress that stuff. And there is a price for oppressing, there is an emotional, price we all pay, for that. And I think it shaves years off of our life, and one of the things I don't know how old you are, but as we get older, we start to realize that probably not the healthiest thing in the world to kind of bottle all that stuff up. And, I think that moments like that remind us the importance of talking, and, too many people go to the grave prematurely because they don't, they don't talk and they don't voice it. So, for people who are experiencing trauma and profound depression and sadness, it's something I've struggled with my whole life. I know it's something that my family, it's, I won't say it, I don't know that it's exclusively hereditary, but certainly it is something that my family struggles with as well. And what I've kind of found is that there's a consolation, that you get when you realize that that's just normal, right? It is normal for us to, and I tell my own kids, at the end of the day, the struggle is why we're here, right? Without getting too philosophical, religious, but it's like, whatever problem, it's like a video game, it's like, the video game would not be any fun if you just blew through it and then you beat the level and it's like game over, you'd feel ripped off. The reality is the challenges, the getting knocked on our ass over and over and over, and getting stronger and smarter is ultimately why we're here. And then you get through that first level and you think, oh, I beat the level. And then it's like, wait a minute, there's a whole nother harder level, right there. Yeah. And so I really think that it is something that things like this that you've taken on, more people should do it. More people should have that moment where they just push the eject button, just like when we did, we moved to the beach, just like you did when you had profound loss. I mean, you did something radically different. So tell me, you guys now, you've got to know each other. You've had your moment where you're all kind of explaining how you got there. The day it comes where it's time to start ascending this, the third highest
climbable mountain.
Climbable mountain in the world. It's the highest mountain in Africa.
Yeah.
So tell me what that day is like, and how long from the moment you start to say, okay, I'm putting my hiking boots on and we're doing this, how long is it from that moment to the moment you're at the peak is that
at the top, the summit?
Yeah. So how many days?
It was a 5.5 day climb. We took the Machami Trail. Again, I didn't do a lot of research, but come to find out, that's the most challenging and most difficult path to take.
Okay.
I found that out day one. So from the guides.
Should have read the brochure.
Right, no, maybe a little bit. But we get there and the guides are there. And there's a bunch of guide companies. That's the Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro and safaris are the primary source of income for people in that area. And we had a guide per person and then an extra. So we had 9 guides. We also had.
So you have someone who's kind of assigned to just help you to mentally keep you in check.
That's right.
Okay.
These people have Some of them have been guides a lot longer than others. There was one guy that has been climbing. He's like 50 years old. He's been climbing the mountains since he was like a teenager. So he knows it backwards and forwards. There's certain people, just like we have down here. There's certain people that are experts, and there's people that they're like, my group was called Africa Biza. Africa Biza was led by a guy who didn't have a lot of mountain experience, but he brought in the best experts that own their own business as well. They own their own smaller guide service, but they came and worked for him because the business was there. And we also had a cook to cook vegetarian meals, obviously, the whole time. And then we had about 20 to 30, I don't know the exact number, of what they call porters. Porters are kind of the low man on the totem pole, unfortunately, because they did the hardest amount of work. They're carrying the weight on their heads, balancing on their shoulders. The guides have on filled backpacks for sure, but the porters have on filled backpacks and a bunch of other stuff, tent equipment, everything. And to be a guide, you have to start off as a porter. So you have to have some climbs under your belt, and you've got to go to guide school, which amongst other things includes first aid and English. So you got to and it's a $400 trip. One of the things that our group did, there was one porter who did a lot more. He also helped serve food and everything like that. He's been a porter for like 4 years, and the cost of the school is only $400. But for 4 years, he's been trying to do it. We all pitched in $50 a piece, and we're going to send him to school. So he had to be a guide. So
that's epic.
Yeah, we were pretty happy about that. He deserved everything.
Was he blown away?
Oh yeah, he tried. He was tearing up. It was awesome. I mean, I guess he could work on his English, sure, but that's why he's going to school.
So over the course of these days, as you're ascending the mountain, tell me a little bit about the scenery, the change in scenery. I mean, what are you seeing day one, day two?
Okay. There's a drastic difference in altitude, right? So we started off in shorts and t-shirts. I had on 2 layers of thermals, a fleece, and you know what I mean? It's snow skiing pants, everything. As the altitudes change, the environment changes, the landscape changes. So the first day till the night where we found our camp was walking up tropical rainforest. There was a path, and a lot of people have taken this path. So there were almost steps. The steps were made by tree roots that ran across the trail that had been patted down. Because again, this trail's up. So it's like people would, over the decades, had formed natural steps in the dirt. So it was the first stop was through the tropical rainforest. The next day we went through what was more like there were still some vegetation, different kinds of vegetation out there, like cactuses and things like that. It was more like a desert, like a high desert. And then day 3 was more like a gravel field, but with boulders as well.
So you're starting to get above the tree line a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. And these are made of lava. Apparently Kilimanjaro used to be an active, long time ago, prehistoric days, it was an active volcano. So all the rocks were made of old lava.
Before you get to day 4, so what's morale like in the group at this point?
I'm glad you asked. Day 1 is everyone's just kind of pumped. At first we're going up the mountain. By the time we got to camp, we were all ready to pass out and drop. Day 2 was pretty good. It was one of only 2 of the 7 days that we weren't getting stormed on, which is something I can do.
Wow, no kidding.
It rained on us 5 of 7 days. One day it rained for about 2 hours, hail. It was hailing, and I've never seen anything like that. I'm from Georgia, where it doesn't really hail.
Right.
But this was like a ice storm, just like it looked like someone had cut on an ice machine or a soft ice machine. It was just shooting it all over the place, and it was challenging in terms of walking in that kind of climate, or with that kind of weather the whole time.
So what's the outside temperature like at this?
Well, I'm not really sure. I can tell you this: day 2, I wasn't wearing shorts anymore. I was wearing a long sleeve shirt and a pair of like running pants. So it was a little windy. Day 3, I had on heavier pair of pants, and I was wearing a fleece. And I think, and they measure, they're Celsius, not Fahrenheit, so that made it a little more complicated too.
Are you seeing wildlife, or is it pretty barren?
It's pretty barren. After we left the rainforest, we didn't really see anything. A couple mice, and birds, but there was not really any wildlife.
All right. So morale, day 3, day 4. It's obviously you're getting thinner oxygen.
Oh yeah.
And I have to suspect that fatigue is setting in mentally and physically.
Day 3 is when everybody got kind of. It was a bad day. It was raining on us. It was not a very technical climb. It was on the desert part.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's raining, because it's pouring down rain, and you got your rain jacket on. You're obviously like kind of looking down at your steps, and so I had the third day was my hardest day. They said day 1 and day 2. Day 1 and the last day, I should say, are the hardest physical days. Day 3 was my hardest mental challenge. It was starting to get to me being up in the mountain, no showers, strange diet. It was porridge and things like that nature, soreness, tweaking joints, everything that comes with that. It was just, it was starting to wear on me. And I started having a lot of like negative thoughts on that trail. They actually did not want us to listen to headphones. They had a Bluetooth speaker. They wanted us to be present, and they wanted us to communicate. I was having such a hard day that day that I had to tell them, I was like, guys, I'm going to put in my headphones and I'm going to listen to my meditation music, or I'm not going to be somebody that you want to be walking with right now.
And so because I would think listening to music would be something. So was there a particular reason behind that? They do want the team communication.
They did. They want us to just communicate with each other and get to know each other. And we were listening to music. It's just Jamie, one of the guys, had a little Bluetooth speaker playing outside. So we were all listening to the same thing. We listened to Africa.
So typically, what time in the mornings are you guys getting started?
It depended on the climb. There were some climbs that were straight vertical, like 5 or 6 hour climbs, and there were climbs that were about 11 or 12 hours that were a little more horizontal, kind of going around the mountain. Put it this way: the mountain is about, I think 3.6 miles high, but we hiked about 40 miles total there and back.
So day 3 is your toughest day.
Mm-hmm.
Are others experiencing similar issues?
Yeah, that was the middle day. That was the day that the mental challenges stepped in about, okay, you're working really hard. Your body's taking a beating, and you start I think just about everybody, because we all had dinner. We all shared all of our meals, and we talked. We did what we call check-ins, which is how am I feeling? How did the day go? And we shared. It was just about sharing,
being honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody. The third day was very hard for her. Mentally, the biggest test of the entire time.
All right. So 4th day, you feel like maybe you've gotten, like you have a second wind, if you will.
Yeah.
And so are you experiencing the effects of the altitude?
Not yet. We took altitude medication.
Okay.
It was like we had a packing list and medication. We had to get malaria vaccinations, all our vaccinations, but we had to carry with us altitude sickness medication. But that day the 4th day was the better day because it took our mind off of things. We weren't just staring at the trail, walking at a snail's pace. By the way, you had to walk extremely slow. Imagine this: taking a step, counting 1 Mississippi before you took the next step.
Okay.
That's how slow.
So they're pacing you.
Absolutely. So we would not have altitude sickness. It was like very slow. If we started walking too fast, they would say, come back. The guides would. They're like, nope.
I'm one of those guys, I experience a lot of times headaches.
Mm-hmm.
And that's prevented me from doing some things like that it's like I've been scared, like, boy, I don't want to have a headache for 10 days straight. So I've been, but I'm very inspired by the story. So I'm going to, but were there anybody in the group starting to show real signs of physical or mental fatigue?
Not yet. Not on the
okay. So we're on side. So the 4th day, now we're getting real serious. We're getting to the 5th day.
Yeah. The 4th day was on the 4th day, which is, you started seeing a couple of people in the group having some physical ailments, a lot more rest breaks being taken on the trail. And
now, is this an age or fitness thing, or is it, in other words, and I'm just asking, are these older people, are they perhaps overweight, or is it just that, or was it a combination, or was it just random?
They were both a little overweight, but they, had been practicing and training for 6 months too. So I'm not going to hold that against them.
Of course, sure.
But
no, we're all a little overweight.
You're right. And it was just beginning
Sure.
the physical pain was starting to. You're starting to.
Well, and I think that, the mountain and the marathon, kind of works there, because I think, really when you hit that 20th mile, it's like it's that's what separates, the people who are going to be able to see it through in some cases, because your body physically just starts to break down at some point.
Yeah. And that day was more challenging. Like, I liked that day more than day 3. Some people hated it, but day 4 was technical. Day 4 was a lot more rock climbing. So instead of me, overthinking and getting and letting my mind take control, my mind was thinking, okay, where am I going to place my foot? What rock am I?
Because you're being present, right?
Exactly.
But and forgive me if I misunderstood this, but you kind of are afraid of heights.
I'm terrified of heights. I always have been.
Before you're climbing the third largest mountain in the world, you might want to. And so tell me about that, because I recognize that, you can be in Yellowstone and you can be at a certain altitude and not even really perceive it, just because of the relative height of everything around you.
Sure.
But in this case, you are walking along some cliff edges.
Day 5 is what they call lava canyon. And so we're heading up to the summit, day and a half away, and we were walking on the edge of a canyon. So that's when it gets, I still wasn't scared. It was still, Michael, was still some of the most beautiful views you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But there was this one stretch that this is the one thing I took from that week of studying about the trip. Before I left, they had this thing called Kissing Rock. It was only about a 10-yard stretch of rock, where you walked along this path that was about just under 2 feet wide. So between you and a rock that you're basically hugging is a 500-foot drop.
Holy cow.
And I was so terrified. And all I did the night before, I told the guides, I'm afraid of heights. They immediately made a decision they were going to carry my backpack across for me. So I knew it was a big deal. So 10 yards doesn't sound very long. It's really only about 4 to 5 sideways strides,
But still, up there in the wind.
Yes.
And, so is the wind howling?
It's blowing it up. My jackets were flat.
That's what would make me nervous. I think is the feeling that there'd be all of a sudden some random gust, and I'd be like, there goes Mike.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
But it was tough. One of the guides stood about halfway with me and helped walk me through it. But I did it. Everybody did it. But with me, my fear of heights, actually a little bit of a cry afterwards. It was so It was so exhilarating. My worry when I looked at it, when I saw it, and everybody was going in front of me, I'm like, I might pass out and just fall down this thing. I'm like, I might not make it. But
now, that said, some people didn't finish.
Right. The next night. The following night, the ascent, we lost somebody. Yeah, he didn't. We had to go back down the
mountain. And why?
Well, we noticed it was the guy from Dallas, great guy. He was a pretty strong fella too. He played college football and did some mixed martial arts in his spare time. But I noticed when we were at the camps every night, he'd get a little bit of a cough that he didn't have on the trails and on the hikes. But the final hike, the ascent, we did at night, because apparently on the summit in the afternoon, kind of like here, the weather can be a lot more drastic than the morning.
Of course.
So Thursday night, we went to bed at 7:00 p.m. They woke us up at 11 p.m. We started our ascent to the top at midnight. And it's the same kind of, it's just boulders and rocks, with a little more trail involved. But we got about 2 hours into it. It's an 8.5 hour ascent at night. We got there at 8:30 in the morning. About 2.5 hours into it, the guy from Texas started that had been coughing a little bit, developed a whooping cough. He just could not
stop coughing.
It was deep. It sounded like his lungs were being shredded, and the guys were like, "We're sorry, we got to bring you down." So, a lot of people, it says 40% of the people that take on the mountain don't make it up. But I feel so bad for him, because he made it through 4 days of mud and pouring rain and all that stuff just to get stopped the night of the ascent.
But to your point, it is equally you can be the best athlete in the world and not be able to achieve it, under the right circumstances. Because it really is something that I've seen, altitude sickness, and it affects different people different ways, so that's obviously a sobering moment when the group says, hey, we're now splitting up and not everybody's going to make the ascent.
Yeah. One of the guys took him back down to the camp that we were going to go to after we hit the top, or the base camp. But yeah, it was kind of eye opening. We had lost somebody. We're like, okay, well, this is we got to be a little more careful now. We slowed our pace even more then.
Okay.
And so for the first about 6.5 hours, it was the same kind of terrain in the dark. And then about the time the sun broke over the mountain, which, my God, was one of the prettiest sights you'll ever imagine, we were in the snow, and thick snow, and walking up that. And you mentioned that it doesn't matter how good of a shape you're in. The most athletic of all of us was Osama, my tent mate. He runs the marathons around the world. We saw the sign in the distance, and probably about 10-minute walk right in the snow at a snail's pace. And he kind of left the group, started speeding up. And I followed him at first. And then the guide was like, y'all slow down. And I listened to him, thankfully. And he was like, I can't go any more slow. I'm tired of walking slow. We've been walking slow for 8 hours. So he gets to the top ahead of us. And we get there, and he's laying in the snow. And I think he's doing snow angels, right? Or whatever. And we get there, and he tells the guys that he's going to take a nap. And they freak out. They're like, no, do not close your eyes. Do not close your eyes. They hoisted him over their shoulders like this and walked him down the mountain and put an oxygen mask on him right away. So he had exhausted. He got altitude sickness because he moved too fast of that last 10-minute stretch of walk.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you get there. You now have two people in the group who have, in effect, even though he made it, fallen, prey to altitude sickness and all of the hazards that go along with it. You're now standing there. The culmination of 6 months of preparation and nearly 6 days of walking. You're at this sign. What is that like, and how long does that moment last?
It is congested. Like
because there's all sorts of other groups up there.
There's five paths you can take to the peak. We took, like I said, the most difficult one. And but that final ascent, they all come together for that last trail. And so there were hundreds, maybe even thousands of people.
Wow.
And not all of them went to the top. There's kind of like a in between where there's a sign as well, but the peak, the 19,300 feet is a little bit further, about 10 minutes further. So it was very exhilarating. But anyway, there was a crowd of people by the sign taking pictures, right?
Sure.
And it was almost like...
And you want your moment by yourself.
That's right. It was almost like elbowing people out of the way and like jumping in when you can. And so I let them have that. And I just kind of took a look at the surroundings, and I broke down. I started crying.
Sure.
It was, I let go of a lot. I was looking at this. There were like boulders on top of the mountain. And I was just, I swear I saw my dad looking at me up there. Yeah. And, but that was just taking it all in until they called my name. They're like, hey, we're taking a big group photo. You know what I mean? And so I took a group photo. And then I wanted to take a solo photo, and there was everybody waiting. And like my guide was like about to, like, I thought he was about to fight a guide with another group. It was like, it was because people were waiting so long, and then I wanted to take a personal photo. So that was really, there was about 10 minutes of chaos at the top, to be honest with you. But like, you just leave that little puddle of people there right around the sign, and you could have as much time to yourself as you needed. So it was awesome.
Sometimes I found that when I get there, wherever there is, whatever it is, it's not as important to capture that moment as I thought it was going to be. Sure. It's more about it sounds cheesy and metaphorical, but it's more about the journey than it is the getting there. Yeah. And when you get there, it's like Okay, cool. But you had so many amazing experiences along the way that they, in some ways, are larger than the experience at the end.
That's the best way to put it. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. It's like, yeah, I loved that I did that, but do I feel like, do I have my hands in there like Rocky? Like I achieved. Yes, I have the realization of what I accomplished, but it's not like it's for lack of a better way of putting it, I don't feel like I'm just like completely energized by reaching the top. What excites me is the challenges that I went through on the way up there, the build up emotions that I let go of, and the realization and the clarity that I gained from that about my future. And so yeah, it was great reaching the top. I got a framed picture. I'm never going to forget it, but yeah, it was, the reason I'm even sitting here with you today and telling this story is because of what I went through and what I've learned. And I feel like, like you said, you're from the South, you hold on to your man card. You don't really show a lot of emotion, but
I think the older you get though, it's like, and I think your peers also know, and so I think that, yeah, there may be some 25-year-old young buck, who is still holding on to that, but I think by the time you reach our age, we all know what the deal is. And we know that, hey, this is not for wussies, life is, it's the real deal,
Yeah.
But, so on the plane ride home, you take pen to paper, at least in the virtual sense, you jump on your computer and you write down pages of thoughts. Tell me a little bit about, what was going through your mind now that you've successfully achieved this goal. What was on your mind on the plane?
Well, we kind of were left with an assignment from our Mountains Marathon Sprint. Like we all talked, and before we got on the plane, we all had another final round table, and we all wrote letters to each other about, it was really just words of acknowledgement and showing respect to each other, and letters of appreciation that we read out loud. But then they told us, they were like, okay, on the ride home, once you get back to the States, and you're back in the real world, quote unquote, you're also going to have new reflections. And so I wrote about a 4 or 5 page essay, whatever you want to call it, about my experience. And it was just half of it was about the climb itself, and half of it was about the personal mountains that I climbed, And so I wrote that out, and I wasn't going to share it like this. It was just to get it out and leave it out.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's out, it's on paper, and that moved on past it.
So you've been home a month.
Got home February 1st. Yep.
Give or take. Well, almost a month.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, and I recognize that this is the type of life event that you'll be looking back on and having different reflections on for decades. But what sort of advice would you give someone who is struggling, who's going through horrific circumstances, whether it's health or relationships or business or financial, as someone who had a rough year, what would you share with them that you've learned from this process?
And that's all I can really share is what I experienced and what helped me, but to me, I found it very valuable to find a group of strangers to talk to who were also looking and searching for something that was missing in their lives. I had friends I could call. I had family members I could call, and I did a little bit, but it was also like I felt at my lowest point, I felt like maybe they might being close to me, and knowing that I'll be their friend no matter what, they might judge me a little bit, and that I didn't want to put that burden on them.
Sure.
And so I thought it was very good to have a group of people with the same goal in mind, the same achievement in mind, and possibly similar problems to share with. And again, I didn't share with the entire group. I shared with the leaders,
sure,
and the 2 leaders, and they they gave me great advice. I mean, incredible advice, and different things every week to work through it, but that kind of kept me going. But I think maybe there's people, like you said, like technology out there, everything that we're going through, people complaining about politics. There's stressors in life, and everyone, especially when you get older, you understand the pain, that the hardships of life,
Sure.
And sometimes you got to talk to somebody. You got to find somebody. That's a fact to talk to, whether it be a therapist. If you have somebody close enough to you that you can open up to completely and not hold anything back, that's even better. But if not, find people like I do. Also, it was, like I said, it was an impulse buy when I went on this trip, but looking back, I tested myself emotionally, mentally, and physically. Like, I can't say I've ever been tested before.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back now at this, I'm like, wow, I'm not going to say that my problems, they weren't, that they weren't that bad. They were the issues that I had in 2019. But I mean, if I can spontaneously take a trip to Africa, not knowing anybody out there, climb the third highest climbable mountain in the world, then I can get through a lot more than I thought I could get through.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective.
For sure. Challenge yourself is what I'm saying. Just find a way to challenge yourself.
I found that really the spontaneity of your decision, I think, is important, because if you leave it up to us to make sound decisions, we will debate things in our mind. Yep. We will say, oh, well, I'll do it after this, or I don't have the finances right now, or oh, well, if this wasn't going on in my life, if I didn't have to take care of this, there's an endless number of excuses that we all concoct. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, they're very real. Right? Yeah, so it's not concocted, but we all, I think, find ourselves delaying life, because it's you talk about having children. People say, well, you talk to any parent, there's never a good time to have a kid. I mean, it's right. Like your finances are never going to be all there. Your relationship's never going to be all tight. All of these things are never going to line up. And you're going to go, oh, today's the day we need to have a kid. Right. That's not the way it works. You just do it. And life moves on. You're home now. Mm-hmm. You've had enough time to at least decompress and reacclimatize. And other people have contacted you, I'm sure, about this. Friends. Sure. So what are people, do they think you're crazy? Do they think, are they saying, dude, that's so inspirational? What are you hearing from friends and family members?
Well, I've heard a lot of people that never thought, that didn't see this in me. They were like, I did not see you to be the Mount Kilimanjaro climbing guy. I showed a couple pictures on Facebook. I just, last week I showed a lot, but my Facebook friends really chimed in and thought it was awesome and things like that. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and all the followers that you have is because my local paper where I grew up picked up the story, because I followed them on Facebook or whatever, and they followed me back, and kind of went through the same things I'm going through with you. Mm-hmm. And I had friends from the past, friends that I still keep up with, contacting me saying, hey man, I know that must've been hard to share. That's awesome. Really, really deep compliments that meant a lot to me. But the main reason that I'm talking to you is because I had a couple responses that I didn't expect. I had a guy that went to Little League with, played Little League baseball with, and, really lost touch. We're Facebook friends, but that's it.
Sure.
He sent me a message saying, hey man, I need to talk. I'm an alcoholic and I've lost my family. And, wow. And that was just one of about two or three. That was the most drastic, but, I still haven't heard from that guy. I'm waiting to hear from him, but there was, like I said, there were two or three of those. So I don't know. my story made kind of a difference. You know,
it matters.
Yeah, it matters.
Look, it matters. I'm telling you, and that's why we want to do this Beach Happy podcast. I mean, and by the way, we're going to put a phone number up on the screen, and if you're experiencing depression or suicidal thoughts, we're going to put the National Suicide Hotline up, because this is natural, guys. I mean, this is, the ebb and flow. Life is a roller coaster. It is not a merry-go-round.
Mm-hmm.
Merry-go-rounds just go around and around and around, steady, even keel. Roller coasters are nauseating, and they're fun, but they're also nauseating, and the ups and downs are what we all signed up for, whether we know it or not. And whether you're climbing a mountain or descending into a valley, that's life. And I think that the more people talk about how to navigate and how to get through that nauseating sometimes ride, it also exhilarating. I think that's the most important thing we can all share. And Daniel, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for having the courage to kind of share with others the feelings of self-doubt and the feelings of emotion that you can only experience through loss. But then I want to also applaud you for doing something extraordinary and doing something different, because the reality is, it is inspirational. It's inspirational to me. It's inspirational to your childhood friends. It's inspirational to 30A fans. It shows us that, there is another way to deal with loss, and that is, I can go out and achieve something. I can go out and remind the world that I'm a force.
That's right.
A force of nature,
Yeah. Well, Mike, I really appreciate that. And, I just want to make sure it's clear. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for any special treatment or anybody to look at me a different way than they did before. I just, the climb itself was a once in a lifetime event in my life, but even more importantly, sharing this kind of stuff. I know that it's helped somebody already, or a couple people already, and something just told me to let down my tough guy wall, and if it can help one person, then I did the right thing.
Well, spoken like a true tough guy who climbs the third highest peak in the world. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
So, guys, we're going to have more Beach Happy podcasts and video casts on the way. If you like the behind the scenes stuff as well, we're going to be sharing some stuff behind the scenes, including some photos from Daniel's trip. We're going to superimpose that in the video interview, but also we're going to share it exclusively with our supporters. So if you want to become a 30A insider, you can go to 30asupporters.com, and for $4.95 a month, you can get all sorts of additional content beyond just what you're seeing on the main 30A page. So thanks again to Daniel for coming in. Thanks to you guys for listening and watching. And I hope if you have anything inspiring in your life, or anything that kind of you think might benefit other 30A fans, that you'll reach out to us and let us know, because we'd love to share it here on the Beach Happy Show. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, is happiness, I believe, is the goal of life. And if you're not happy, you're not going to be in a position to do charity. You're not going to be in the right attitude to help others. Ultimately, if you're not happy, you're not doing anybody any good. So focus on yourself. Focus on making sure that you're mentally and physically healthy and happy. And after that, all sorts of good things come. So that's a process. It's not something you can just decide. It's something you have to work at every day. And I can tell you, and I'm sure Daniel would echo this, I have to work at it every day. I'm not a happy person by nature. I have to fake happiness a lot of times. And that said, when you do that, it becomes habit and it becomes real. And I think that the more all of us can be open and honest about that, ultimately we're going to help each other live healthier, happier lives. So anyway, thanks again, Daniel.
All
right.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.